My wife had an affair with my best friend. I exposed her in front of our entire family. Her dad then gave me a house worth $150,000. But when we divorced, her family tried to take the house back. Hello, Reddit community. I'm in a whirlwind of emotions and seeking your perspective to untangle the chaos that's become my life. Here's my story. I've spent the last 6 years married to a woman we'll call Jessica, who is now 32 years old. Our journey began in college, where we connected through a mutual friend. Jessica was not only strikingly beautiful, but also possessed a sharp wit and a deep understanding of me, qualities that made me feel truly seen for the first time. Our relationship progressed rapidly, and within 2 years, we were married. At that point, my life felt nearly perfect. I was thriving as a project manager, and Jessica was excelling in her marketing career. Together, we traveled, built a life, and shared countless memories. There was never a whisper of doubt in my mind about her loyalty. My best friend Mike, who is 35 now, has been like a brother to me since high school. Our bond was forged through ups and downs, from heartbreaks to wild adventures, and I trusted him implicitly. He was not only the best man at our wedding, but also an integral part of our lives. Jessica adored him, and it seemed like I had the ideal circle of trust and love. However, the facade began to crumble about 1.5 years ago, following the birth of our son, Ethan, who is now 18 months old. Postpartum, Jessica became increasingly withdrawn. Initially, I attributed her distance to the overwhelming demands of parenthood. We were both grappling with sleepless nights, the pressures of our careers, and the learning curve of raising our first child. Yet, as time passed, the signs became harder to ignore. It was more than just new parent fatigue. It felt as though a chasm was growing between us. And unfortunately, my worst fears were realized when I discovered the unfathomable. Jessica and Mike, the two people closest to me, had started a relationship that resulted in a child. I'm on the verge of confronting them both, a moment filled with dread and necessity. As I prepare for this confrontation, I seek your advice and insights on navigating this treacherous terrain of betrayal and heartache. Despite my initial resolve to not overthink things, small yet significant changes began to surface. Jessica, traditionally a private individual, became exceptionally secretive about her phone. It was a marked shift from her usual behavior. She had always been relaxed about leaving her phone around the house. Recently, however, it became her constant companion, even accompanying her to the bathroom. She updated her passcode, a first in all the years I've known her. Any attempt I made to use her phone was met with defensiveness and vague excuses. While trust had always been the foundation of our marriage, these developments started to gnaw at me. Night after night, I noticed her light up with a smile as she typed away on her device. Whenever I inquired about her late-night correspondence, she brushed off my questions, attributing the exchanges to work or conversations with her mother. I strained to take her word for it. Then, about 3 months ago, a breakdown rather, occurred. Jessica left her phone unattended on the kitchen counter, a rare oversight given her recent vigilance. Compelled by a mix of suspicion and desperation, I decided to invade her privacy. I justified my actions by the unease twisting in my gut as I unlocked her. The confirmation was right there, Friday at 7 p.m. Reading those words felt like a physical blow, an agonizing confirmation of a full-blown affair. My mind was a tumultuous storm of emotions. Part of me screamed to confront her immediately, yet another, more cautious part of me craved undeniable evidence before I exposed the devastating truth. I had a gut feeling that Emma was not the name of another woman, but rather a disguise. That restless night, as Jessica settled beside me in bed, the reality of her betrayal became suffocating. Here was the woman I loved, the mother of my child, now a stranger enshrouded in deception. The thought that she might be meeting someone I knew, possibly someone close to me, filled me with dread. As Friday approached, I feigned a late work night. Jessica seemed oddly relieved by my announcement, mentioning casually that she'd be dining out with a friend. She offered no further details, and I asked for none, masking my true intentions under a veneer of normalcy. I left work early, ensuring to park blocks away from the Willow Inn to avoid detection. Heart pounding and hands trembling, I staked out the hotel, a silent observer to the unfolding betrayal. Around 6:45 p.m., Jessica's car turned into the parking lot. She emerged, looking radiant, dressed as though for a romantic rendezvous, confirming my worst fears. But the deepest cut was yet to come. Another vehicle entered the parking lot, one painfully familiar to me. It was Mike's car. The man I had trusted like a brother for over 15 years alighted and met Jessica. Their embrace, unmistakably intimate, was a visceral blow. They walked into the hotel together, hand in hand, leaving me paralyzed with shock in my hidden vantage point. There, in the dimming light of that parking lot, the two people I had trusted most in the world crystallized my worst fears into stark reality. Compelled by the need for irrefutable evidence, I decided to act cautiously. I couldn't afford a confrontation in the parking lot, based merely on accusations that could be easily dismissed or denied. I needed them to face their betrayal head-on, without room for deceit. With my phone ready, I discreetly filmed them entering the hotel, their hands intertwined, a clear indication of their intimacy. That was my initial proof, but I knew I needed more. Assuming the guise of a businessman, I checked into the same hotel under an alias, claiming I was in town for a conference. My research into the messages had paid off. I knew they had booked a room on the 3rd floor. Strategically, I requested a room nearby to execute my plan. My strategy was straightforward but bold. I would wait until they were settled in their room and then confront them. The crucial element was capturing their immediate reactions on video, especially Mike's once he realized his betrayal had been uncovered. As I sat in my room, time seemed to stretch indefinitely, my mind replaying the years of friendship with Mike, the shared experiences, and the brotherly bond I once believed unbreakable. And then there was Jessica, the woman I had loved, the mother of our child. The depth of her deception was unfathomable. How long had this affair been hidden behind the facade of our life together? At approximately 7:30 p.m., I detected noise outside my door. Peering through the peephole, I watched Jessica and Mike jovially approaching their room, laughing, their joy a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. I gave them 10 minutes, enough time to settle into the illusion of privacy. Then, heart pounding with a mixture of dread and determination, I stepped out and approached their door. I knocked firmly. The door swung open, and Mike's initial confusion quickly morphed into utter horror as he recognized me. Jessica stood frozen behind him, her complexion ashen, eyes wide in terror. For a moment, I said nothing. I simply held up my phone, ensuring that every second of their stunned faces was captured, documenting the reality of their duplicity. The unexpected sound of a baby crying pierced the tense silence, halting my planned confrontation. It wasn't the familiar cry of my son, Ethan. This was the cry of a much younger infant. Overwhelmed and fueled by a surge of emotions, I pushed past Mike and stormed into the room. In the dimly lit corner, a crib cradled a newborn. My heart sank further. Jessica, overcome by the moment, began to sob uncontrollably, pleading with me to hear her out. But the betrayal had already unfolded in front of my eyes, layering pain upon pain. Even as I processed this shocking twist, my mind replayed the moments leading up to this confrontation. After catching Jessica and Mike entering the hotel, I had wrestled with my emotions, fighting the urge to immediately break down the door. I knew that capturing undeniable proof was essential, and any premature action could jeopardize this. Hidden from view, I had listened intently to the sounds emanating from their room. The walls, thin as they were, carried the muffled tones of their voices and laughter. Time seemed to stretch interminably until a chilling silence fell. Then faintly, the unmistakable sounds of intimacy broke the stillness, moans that confirmed my worst fears. Resolved to document everything, I grabbed my phone. Their room had a window facing the alley, adjacent to mine. With my heart pounding, I quietly climbed out, carefully maneuvering across the narrow ledge to position myself outside their window without being seen. From my precarious vantage point, I began recording. Inside, the scene was as gut-wrenching as imagined. Jessica lay on the bed, her expression one of abandoned inhibition, while Mike was intimately engaged with her. The visual of their betrayal was visceral, and though it twisted my stomach, I pressed on with the recording. This evidence was crucial, not just for confronting them, but for salvaging my own reality from the lies. As they continued, oblivious to my watchful eye, what I captured next was not just an affair, but a profound betrayal that cut to the very core of our lives together. Immersed in their own world, Jessica and Mike were completely oblivious to anything but their own pleasure. The intimacy and familiarity of their actions made it painfully clear that this was not a mere casual encounter. Their coordination and the depth of their engagement spoke of a long-standing affair, a relationship built on a foundation of secrecy and deceit. I zoomed in with my phone, documenting each moment meticulously. Their synchronized movements, Jessica's grip on Mike, the fervor with which they engaged with each other. It was more than I could bear, yet I remained composed, hidden. I was not ready to reveal my presence. I wanted to collect every piece of evidence without them noticing. As they lay there afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, the scene before me was both surreal and sickening. They were relaxed, satisfied, as if in their own perfect bubble. But I had captured their reality on video, a reality that would soon shatter their illusion of secrecy. Retreating to my room, my mind was a torrent of emotions and plans. With the damning evidence in hand, I was not going to confront them impulsively. I had a larger scheme in mind, something that would expose them under the full glare of scrutiny. The next morning, I took up a covert position near the parking lot where Mike had parked his car. From my hiding spot, I observed them leave the hotel with the ease of a couple unburdened by guilt. Their laughter and lighthearted banter as they drove away was a stark contrast to the gravity of their betrayal. I tailed them discreetly as they headed back towards our neighborhood. Mike dropped Jessica off a few blocks from our house to avoid any suspicion. The casual kiss they shared before she walked the rest of the way home was a mundane act of farewell that belied the depth of their deception. Upon her return, I maintained the facade of normalcy. I made no mention of the hotel Mike or the newborn I had seen. Instead, I greeted her warmly, suggesting we throw a grand birthday party for her, a celebration with friends, exquisite food, and festive decorations. Her face brightened with genuine excitement, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. She enthusiastically discussed her plans, clueless that the world as she knew it was about to change. Jessica remained blissfully unaware of the looming revelation as she immersed herself in the party preparations. She dedicated hours to crafting the guest list, phoning friends, and meticulously planning every detail to ensure the celebration would be flawless. Her enthusiasm even extended to asking Mike to assist with the setup on the day, deepening the irony of the situation. I observed quietly, a sardonic smile hidden beneath a facade of support, as she unwittingly entangled herself further into the web of her own making. Meanwhile, I was orchestrating my own plans that would leave no room for denial or excuses. On the night of the party, I intended to lay bare the full extent of their deceit: the incriminating texts, the hotel footage, the recordings of their encounters. My goal was not just to expose, but to make them feel the gravity of their betrayal in front of those they cherished most. The day of the party arrived, and Jessica was a whirlwind of activity, her excitement palpable. The air was thick with betrayal and the unmistakable reality of their deceit as the video concluded. I faced them, my expression as frosty as the silence that followed. Jessica was in tears, her face buried in her hands, while Mike looked utterly lost, his eyes wide with shock. "I think that's enough of a birthday surprise, don't you?" I remarked coldly, the television screen going dark behind me. The room instantly erupted into chaos. Voices raised in anger and disbelief, fingers pointed in accusation. Jessica, overwhelmed, attempted to flee the room, but I blocked her path. "Don't even think about leaving," I hissed. "We're not done here." Mike, flustered and cornered, stuttered through his apologies, but the room was uninterested in his excuses. He scanned the faces around him, finding no allies, only disgusted and angry glares. But I wasn't finished. Turning back to Jessica, I added, "Oh, and there's something else you should know." I pulled out my phone once again, this time revealing the text messages between her and Emma. With deliberate clarity, I read each message aloud, exposing every lie, every excuse, every repulsive detail they had exchanged. There was nowhere left for her to hide. The party quickly disintegrated. Jessica collapsed to the floor, her body racked with sobs, while Mike slipped out the back, abandoned by all. I made no move to stop him. His part in my life was over. The guests departed one by one, the atmosphere too charged with tension and discomfort to endure. By the time the last person left, Jessica remained on the floor, a heap of misery and regret. Standing over her, I felt an overwhelming numbness. "You did this to yourself," I murmured quietly before turning to leave. As I stepped outside, a final revelation hit me. The baby wasn't ours, it was theirs. With that night behind me, I cut all ties with Jessica and Mike, determined to move forward without them. The following months were a struggle, but with support from close friends and my new partner, Leah, I began to rebuild. Leah wasn't just a rebound, she was a genuine connection, a relationship that was everything my marriage had not been. We quickly grew serious, discussing plans to move in together. For the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. One of the most unexpected turnarounds occurred when Jessica's father, Bill, unexpectedly decided to give me the house, recognizing perhaps the extent of his daughter's betrayal. This gesture, though shocking, helped cement the new chapter I was building with Leah, one rooted in trust and real commitment. Bill had always shown me kindness, Even in the aftermath of the debacle with Jessica, he understood the depth of pain his daughter had inflicted upon me, and perhaps he also harbored a sense of guilt over how everything unraveled. One unexpected day, he reached out with an offer that felt like a gesture of reconciliation. A peace offering, he called it. He offered me the house, valued at around $150,000, located on the outskirts of the city. It was a serene place, surrounded by ample land, ideal for a fresh start. Bill expressed his desire to distance himself from the aftermath of Jessica's actions, suggesting that the house could serve as a new beginning for me. Initially, I hesitated, grappling with the moral implications of accepting such a significant gift from Jessica's father. However, Bill was insistent, explaining his disappointment in his daughter's selfishness and his wish to amend things in whatever way he could. In the end, I accepted the house. Leah and I moved in together shortly thereafter, slowly piecing together a new life filled with hope and stability. Several months later, on a rare sunny Saturday afternoon, Leah and I were enjoying the tranquility of our new home when the gravelly sound of tires on the driveway caught my attention. I expected a routine delivery or perhaps a neighbor dropping by. Instead, my heart sank at the sight of a familiar silver sedan. Jessica and Mike had arrived unannounced. It was the first time I'd seen either of them since that fateful party night. Leah, sensing the sudden shift in my demeanor, looked at me with concern. "What are they doing here?" she asked. "I have no idea," I muttered, the old wounds throbbing anew as I approached them. Jessica wore a smug expression that I knew all too well, while Mike appeared uneasy, almost regretful for being there. It was clear they weren't here for a cordial visit. "We need to talk," Jessica declared, her voice iced. I crossed my arms, bracing myself for whatever demand was coming. "What the hell do you want?" I asked, striving to maintain. Jessica exchanged a brief, hesitant glance with Mike before turning back to me with a hardened gaze. "We want the house," she stated. I stared at them. "Excuse me?" I responded, incredulous. "This house," Jessica pressed, her eyes narrow. "It wasn't fair for my father to give it to you. It belongs to me and Mike. We deserve it more than you." I was stunned by their audacity. "Are you out of your mind? Your dad gave me this house as a gift after everything you did. You've got no claim to it," I countered, my voice thick with disbelief. Jessica stepped closer, her face just inches seething with entitlement. "You didn't earn this. You don't deserve it. We want it back," she snapped. At that moment, Leah stepped up beside me, her presence a reassuring support. "You can't just demand a house because you feel entitled," said, her voice calm but firm. "Bill gave it to him. It's his now. You need to leave." Jessica's resolve hardened. "We'll take it by force if we have to," she hissed menacingly. My fists clenched at my sides, struggling to keep my anger under control. "Get off my property, Jessica. Now," I demanded. But before I could further diffuse the situation, Mike's patience snapped. He lunged forward, grabbing my shirt and shoving me with surprising force. I stumbled, but regained my balance just in time to see Mike's fist swinging toward my face. The impact jolted me, but adrenaline surged through my veins. I retaliated, landing a solid punch on Mike's jaw, sending him staggering backward. Jessica shrieked, attempting to intervene, but Leah swiftly pulled her back, preventing her from getting involved. Enraged, Mike charged at me again. We grappled, falling to the ground, our bodies kicking up dust as we rolled across the lawn. Mike managed to land a few painful hits to my ribs, but in a burst of fury, I overpowered him, pinning him to the ground. "You think you can just take everything from me?" I snarled, my fists pounding against his chest. "You think you can just waltz into my life and take whatever you want?" Mike's face contorted in pain beneath me. My anger reached its peak, fueled by his betrayal and his audacious attempt to claim my home. "Stop, please," Jessica pleaded from the sidelines, her voice desperate. But my focus was unyielding. I wanted him to understand the depth of the pain he had caused. Then, in a desperate twist, Mike tried to throw me off. His head struck the ground with a horrifying crack. Instantly, all motion ceased. The fury within me evaporated, replaced by a chilling fear. "Mike," I called, shaking him slightly, but he remained unresponsive. Jessica's scream tore through the air as she rushed to his side, pushing me away with frantic hands. She cradled his head, her sobs piercing the sudden stillness. "What did you do?" she shrieked, her eyes wide with horror and act. "What the fuck did you do?" Jessica's scream echoed, mixing with the chaos of the moment. I backed away, my hands trembling uncontrollably. This had gone too far, far beyond any intentions I had of simply defending my rights. Leah was already on the phone with emergency services, her voice steady as she described the urgency. The ambulance arrived within minutes, slicing through the tense air with its sirens. Medics rushed to Mike's side as Jessica attempted to revive him, her efforts marred by fear and desperation. Mike lay unconscious, a steady trickle of blood staining the grass behind his head. As they loaded him into the ambulance, Jessica's accusatory screams at me continued, her words sharp with grief and anger. Leah and I stood there on the lawn, enveloped in a numb shock. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on me. I had never intended for any confrontation to escalate to this level. All I had wanted was to protect what was rightfully mine, to finally stand my ground against the betrayal and manipulation they had subjected me to. Over the following days, sleep eluded me. My mind replayed the incident over and over. Each detail etched painfully clear. News from the hospital wasn't comforting. Mike was recovering from a severe concussion and a fractured skull. Jessica, ever the loyal partner, had taken up vigil at his bedside, her silence towards me speaking volumes of the impending storm, and the storm did come. Just days later, a legal notice arrived, jolting me from my troubled reverie. Jessica was suing me for ownership of the house, alleging that the transfer of property by her father was illegitimate. Her claim was that Bill had no legal right to give away what was hers by inheritance, and she was prepared to battle it out in court. Frustrated yet resolute, I reached out to Bill, who was incensed upon hearing the news. That ungrateful brat, he grumbled through the phone, his disappointment in his daughter palpable. He reassured me of his support, promptly securing a skilled lawyer to defend against Jessica's claims. Bill's anger was clear. He had given me the house not just as a gift, but as a statement against Jessica's greed and entitlement. As the court date approached, Jessica's legal team pushed a narrative of Bill's supposed mental unfitness at the time of the deed transfer, challenging his capacity to make such decisions. The courtroom battles were draining, with Jessica's lawyer painting a picture of undue influence and questioning Bill's mental clarity. Despite the challenges, Bill's resolve didn't waver. He stood by me, determined to see his daughter's claims dismissed, reinforcing his belief that I deserved the house far more than Jessica ever did. The legal arguments from Jessica's side were flimsy at best, but they clung to them with desperation. Bill, steadfast in his support, testified that he had given me the house of his own free will, emphasizing Jessica's lack of any rightful claim. In court, he depicted her as a self-centered individual who never valued his efforts or sacrifices, which, though harsh, resonated with the judge. The ruling was clear and favorable. I retained the house, a verdict that affirmed my right to move forward without the shadow of their claims over me. Jessica, unable to contain her fury, stormed out of the courtroom in silence, her departure as dramatic as her entrance. Mike, still reeling from his injuries, chose not to attend, perhaps to avoid the humiliation or confrontation that the courtroom might bring. With the legal turmoil behind us, Leah and I began to truly move on. The house was now indisputably ours, and Jessica and Mike had faded into an unpleasant memory. Life started to settle into a comforting rhythm, with Bill frequently visiting, becoming not just a benefactor, but a part of our family. His relationship with Jessica had irrevocably soured post-trial. He declared he was finished with her toxic behavior, focusing instead on building a more positive connection with us. Bill's visits became a source of joy and guidance, helping us with practical advice and repairs, reinforcing a sense of stability in our lives. Leah and I embraced our newfound peace, enjoying quiet weekends, exploring the nearby countryside, and planning for a hopeful future. It seemed we had turned a significant corner, with the unpleasant past tucked firmly behind us. However, life, as it often does, held another twist in store. About a month after the trial, just as we settled into this new chapter, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, serene and uneventful, until the doorbell echoed through our home. Leah and I exchanged curious glances as I went to answer the door, the tranquility of the day disrupted by the sudden intrusion. What awaited me on the other side was a surprise I hadn't anticipated, challenging the calm stability we had only just begun to enjoy. As I approached the door, my heart beat with a mix of anticipation and old resentment. Opening it, I found Mike standing there, a stark contrast to the confident friend I once knew. His appearance was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and dark bags under his eyes painted a picture of a man deeply worn by life's ordeals. For a moment, I was speechless. The sight of him reigniting a mix of anger and betrayal I thought I had moved past. "Can we talk?" His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, and he couldn't quite meet my gaze. My first instinct was to shut the door in his face, to turn away from the person who had betrayed me so deeply. But something in his demeanor, perhaps the visible defeat, the profound exhaustion, made me pause. This was not the Mike who had confidently entered that hotel. This was a man broken by his own choices. I stepped aside, a silent assent for him to enter. Leah remained in the backyard, intuitively understanding the need for space. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the air thick with unspoken words and tension. "I know I don't deserve to be here," Mike started, his voice hoarse as if every word was a struggle. "But I need to apologize. Saying sorry won't fix what I've done, but you deserve to hear it." I remained silent, a part of me not ready to forgive, yet curious enough to listen. "Jessica and it was a mistake," he continued, his eyes searching for the right word. "I don't know why I let it continue for so long. I ruined everything, our friendship, your marriage, and for what? It wasn't even real." He paused, his voice breaking as he recounted the aftermath. "After the trial, Jessica began spiraling, blaming everyone but herself. Living with her became unbearable. I realized too late that I had destroyed my life for someone who was merely using me. I ended it with her last week." A complex mix of satisfaction and pity stirred within me. Mike had sacrificed everything for a fleeting illusion, and now he was left with nothing. "Look, man, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," Mike said, his voice trembling. "I don't expect us to be friends again, but it's important for me that you know how sorry I am. I hurt you profoundly, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." The room fell into a heavy silence. Responding wasn't easy. The depth of my past anger clashed with the broken man before me, making it difficult to maintain my resentment. His sincere remorse was palpable, challenging my desire to hold on to the bitterness of betrayal. Though Mike's apology brought some solace, I couldn't find it within myself to forgive him fully. "I don't know what to say, Mike," I responded after a heavy silence, my voice resolute yet devoid of the earlier rage. "You're right, you don't deserve my forgiveness, but I don't hate you anymore." He nodded, his eyes brimming with tears, accepting this small concession as more than he had hoped for. Mike left shortly thereafter, and our paths did not cross again for many years. The meeting left me with mixed emotions, relieved by his remorse, yet the scars he had helped inflict remained tender. Healing was gradual, a process that began in earnest that day. As time passed, life blossomed in new and unexpected ways. Leah and I married in a quiet ceremony surrounded by a handful of dear friends. We found genuine happiness, a stark contrast to the turmoil of my past. Bill continued to be an integral part of our lives, having severed all ties with Jessica after the court case. Last I heard, she had relocated, attempting to piece together a new existence elsewhere, far from the wreckage of her old life. Life seemed stable and content until one ordinary day shattered the calm. Leah and I were returning from the grocery store, our conversation light and filled with laughter, when I noticed a young boy on the corner of the street. His gaze was intense, unsettling, and as we approached, a cold dread settled over me. Without warning, the boy charged. His expression twisted with fury. He brandished a piece of rebar, swinging it viciously. The first blow struck me unexpectedly, a sharp pain erupting in my side as I gasped for air. I staggered, grappling for balance, but the boy was relentless. Leah's screams pierced the air as she tried to intervene, but the boy's fury was unyielding. Blow after blow landed, each one fueled by an inexplicable rage. Blood began to trickle down my forehead, blurring my vision as his shouts filled the air. With each strike, the shock of the assault deepened, the reality of this violent resurgence of my past life crashing down around me. "This is for my mom," the boy shouted, his voice thick with venom. "You ruined everything. She's been suffering because of you." It was then, amid the chaos and pain, that I recognized him. This was Jessica and Mike's son. Bystanders began to gather, their phones out, recording the scene, calling for help, but none dared to physically intervene. Leah was beside me, her sobs piercing the tumult as she desperately tried to shield me from the blows. The assault continued until two brave souls from a nearby shop finally intervened, tackling him to the ground and ending the brutal attack. I lay on the sidewalk, struggling for breath, pain radiating through every part of my body. Leah clung to my hand, her face etched with fear as we awaited help. The police arrived swiftly, detaining the young boy amidst his continued screams and accusations. He blamed me relentlessly for his mother's perceived suffering as they took him away. The following days saw me confined to a hospital bed, nursing a fractured rib, a concussion, and numerous bruises. The reality of the situation felt like a waking nightmare. Jessica's son was sent to a juvenile detention center. I couldn't help but dwell on the destructive path Jessica had set her son on, filling his young mind with venom and lies all directed at me. The consequences were now tragically clear. A few weeks later, The situation escalated when I received notice of another lawsuit from Jessica. She was suing me over her son's arrest, absurdly claiming that I had provoked him, that my past actions had incited his violent outburst. Her audacity to twist the narrative infuriated me. Bill's reaction was one of sheer outrage. "She's lost her mind," he grumbled upon hearing the news. "I'll help you fight this. She's not getting away with it." True to his word, Bill engaged the same formidable lawyer who had secured our previous legal victory. As we prepared for court, the evidence on our side was overwhelming. Surveillance videos captured the attack, multiple witnesses corroborated the unprovoked nature of the assault, and Leah's heartfelt testimony painted a clear picture. The judge dismissed Jessica's case swiftly, recognizing the baselessness of her claim. But for me, merely winning this case wasn't enough. I was tired of being perpetually dragged into Jessica's twisted games, tired of being the victim. It was time to take a stand, to ensure that this cycle of vengeance and manipulation ended once and for all. I initiated a countersuit against Jessica for damages, claiming emotional distress and the medical expenses resulting from her son's attack. My intention was clear: to send a resounding message that her continual attempts to wreak havoc on the lives of others through her bitterness would no longer be tolerated. The trial that ensued was grueling. Jessica, appearing both worn and defiant, sat across the courtroom. She portrayed herself as a victim, weaving a narrative that I had been the architect of her downfall. However, the evidence and testimonies presented told a different story. Bill, in a poignant moment, stood against his daughter, recounting to the court how she had indoctrinated her son with falsehoods, molding him into a vessel of her own resentment and anger. The judgment was in my favor. Jessica was mandated to compensate for my medical costs, and the ordeal further damaged her standing. Her son continued his sentence in juvenile detention, their familial bonds frayed and uncertain. Winning this lawsuit didn't bring the relief or satisfaction one might expect. Instead, it left a hollow ache within me. The entire saga with Jessica was a series of losses: relationships, peace, and time. Though she was now facing the consequences of her actions, there was no triumph in her downfall. It was merely a sad, inevitable end to a path marred by destruction. Leah and I consciously chose to move forward, not allowing the shadows of these events to cloud our future. The attack, though it had shaken us, would not define our lives. We were focused on healing, on building a brighter, shared future filled with positivity and growth. As for Jessica and Mike, they faded into the backdrop of my life. I heard nothing further from them post-trial. They were, I presumed, somewhere out there, trying to assemble the fragments of their once intertwined lives, a task no longer of any concern to me. I've moved beyond the past that once seemed determined to pull me under. Healing wasn't quick, but it was profound. Standing here now, I can genuinely say I've found happiness, a deep, fulfilling peace that had once seemed so elusive. For the first time in a long while, I feel genuinely free, truly happy.